Hello, and welcome to the Brave New Weed podcast. And now, here's your host, Joe Dolce.
Welcome to episode 23 of the Brave New Weed podcast. Matthew, can you believe we've done 23 of these?
Oh, yeah. I think it's amazing. We just get to keep going.
And I want to do 23 more. There's so many people I want to talk to.
Yeah.
So tonight we have a great guest. He's Jeff, the 420 chef.
This is a good one.
Jeff is great. No, so many people have been making edibles. So many people I know are making edibles. Like, they'll call me, hey, will you try this? Will you try that? And they're good, but they don't really know what they're doing, and they could be great. I've had delicious, amazing edibles in many places in the world. So Jeff is a great chef, first of all.
Well, yeah, and it's almost unfair to refer to this as just being edibles, because I think it gives people the impression that it's like chocolates and candies, and some of it is that, but we're talking about proper meals.
Food, real
deal,
incredible
pesto.
pastas. Yeah,
like
deliciousness.
Oh, it's going to be great.
And the thing about Jeff is he knows how to get the oils to taste neutral. He neutralizes the oils. So they don't taste grassy and they don't taste bitter, and you don't feel like you're, eating a mouthful of a dried plant that, is better off done other things with, perhaps. But the other great news is, I want to tell you this, is that we luckily have 3 copies of Jeff's book to give away.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love doing giveaways. I think it's a great way for us to give back to listeners as well on top of the podcast. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that the next 3 new Patreon patrons that sign on to support the show at a level of $5 a month or more, the first 3 that sign up, we're going to send you a copy of Jeff's book, The 420 Gourmet, The Art of Elevated Cannabis Cuisine. Sounds awesome.
Published by Harper Wave.
I'm keeping one for myself.
I already have one, and it's great. I promise you. It's a really great cookbook.
But we have 3 to send out. We're going to be keeping our eye on Patreon and keeping our eye on the notifications. The first 3 people to sign up, again, that $5 a month level or higher, we're going to send you a copy of Jeff's book.
All right, so before we get to Jeff, let's do some news.
Every episode of the Brave New Weed podcast is archived and available to you for free at any time. Go over to bravenewweed.com/podcast and you will find episodes ranging from how to dose for pain and anxiety to how to have a good time with a cocktail. Joe, somebody needs to check the thermostat.
The world is changing. Is that what you're saying?
I'm unbelievable. That I'm about to say the phrase that I'm about to say, which is
go on, utter it.
Yertle the Turtle, Mitch McConnell, King Republican on the Hill, has put forth a bill to legalize hemp in all of the United States.
I mean, okay, let's just say it's the only intelligent thing he's probably ever done while being in the Senate. But, I mean, this is a radical act only because hemp has been illegal for no reason for 80 years, okay? It's just insane. It's a thing that makes rope and clothes and fiber and CBD. Seeds for birds.
For humans.
Actually, do you know that hemp seed for birds has never been illegal?
Oh, is that right?
No, that's the only place in America you can have hemp seeds legally.
Check me out.
Check me out. It's completely mental. But what started this? Farmers in Kentucky saying, "Hey, we need to grow hemp."
I think that's absolutely what it boils down to: is the industrialization coming online, people seeing all the different potentials of the cannabis plant in general, and this is, okay. The dark storm cloud of this story is that the bill itself does go very deep into saying, like, all right, we are only talking about hemp. And we are not talking about the evil cousin
cannabis
that is cannabis, sativa. And it's like, but I don't know. Is it crap? Is it just a way to like pull a stunt to make sure that cannabis stays Schedule 1 and then descheduling?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think it's probably makes sense. I think farmers are really struggling. Really? Oh. Farmers I've spoken to while reporting, they don't want to be growing cotton anymore.
Well, it's tobacco, Joe.
Tobacco's done. It's over.
Out. Everybody's getting out.
All the big companies bought up all those tobacco fields years ago. There's nowhere for a small farmer, even a medium-sized farmer in that industry. So what are these guys, let's support farmers. Let's let them grow something that's good for the soil, creates a medicine, creates a decent fiber.
It does
remediates.
so many things.
It remediates brownfields.
Yeah.
It sucks. It's what they planted around Chernobyl to get the radioactive shit out of the water.
Recently.
I mean, come on, Mitch.
I mean, you want to undo some like fracking problems, right? Like we've been dumping garbage from fracking. Let's go plant some hemp there. Let's, mining leakage in the Virginias. Let's go plant some hemp there. Like, let's start making smart decisions to clean up our country and to get people access to medicine and resources grown in the United States.
And
how radical.
So radical. And give farmers a crop they can make some money on.
Oh, jeez.
Congratulations. All right. Thank you, Mitch McConnell. What else happened? What else happened in news? Oh, yeah.
I live in Bushwick, Brooklyn, which is, of course, hip kid central these days. And I read an article the other day about the first shop. And it's a coffee shop. I believe it was called Underground Coffee. Clever name for a hipster coffee shop. But they are the first ones that I have heard of in my neighborhood that is now selling cannabis-infused coffee.
Cannabis with THC or cannabis CBD?
So it's CBD. Obviously, we can't be selling THC. That's a big no-no.
Not in New York yet, City. In the dark ages.
Yeah,
here in the dark cave of New York.
Maybe we can get Mitch McConnell to talk to Cuomo.
Yeah, that'll be a good idea. Yeah.
But so they're doing it, and I guess the way that it works, I haven't had it yet. I got to run out there and try it. I know I'm a terrible podcast host because I didn't immediately run out and sample it. But apparently, early reviews are positive. People are saying, I love coffee, but it makes me a little jittery. And if I get it with the CBD packet, and I guess it's a packeted CBD dose, so it's measured and measurable, and they can put it in anything. So if you want it in a latte, if you want it in a straight black coffee, if you want it in an espresso, they'll just add it as an additive.
So what's interesting about this is that there was a study put out by my alma mater, Northwestern University, a couple of weeks ago that said there was a correlation actually between coffee use and cannabis use.
Right.
Okay? And I read the study about 8 times and I couldn't understand what the hell it was saying, but you managed to come up with a headline on it. What's the study say, Matthew?
We had to pour over it. It is...
Pour over it. Ha, 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 ha.
You got me.
Sorry. Okay, go on. What did it... yeah.
So it's really difficult to chop through because there's not a lot of conclusivity to the study in meaning anything. But from what I could figure out, it seems that coffee is the anti-high.
I mean, from what I understood, if you drink a whopping 8 cups of coffee.
Yeah, well, I don't think you actually have to drink
all
all
right, if you
8.
drink a lot of coffee.
Steps people up, right.
And have some cannabis, it's going to cut the high because they're battling for the same receptors?
Yeah, there's a bit of that. And from the way that I can understand it the best, and again, I'm not a scientist. I did not do this study. I'm
Obviously,
just trying to
neither of us are
reading
here.
comprehension.
Yep.
But it says that they have found out that chemicals in coffee are also using the endocannabinoid system to have effects on the body. And what they're showing is that these receptors are lessened by the presence of an abundance of coffee. And the transmitters, the neurotransmitters, are lessened by the abundance of coffee. And this is the opposite effect as taking cannabis. So, you ingest cannabis and we experience things like, our stress levels go down and our inflammation goes down and certain steroid productions in the body are lessened. And apparently the presence of a high amount of coffee does the opposite. It's decreasing those cannabinoid receptors and cannabinoid transmitters.
So you're going to get more stress.
Well, and I think that makes sense from what we know about coffee.
This is like such insight into the obvious, isn't it?
Jitters you up, increases your tension, like all these things that we know coffee does, stimulates versus depressing. So it's kind of like the anti-pot.
I don't know what to say about that.
Well, it's your alma mater. Maybe we should get the guys who did the study.
All right, let's see if we can find out something more about this. But in the meantime...
Anything else about coffee while we're on?
I have nothing else to say about coffee other than that I wish I had some right now.
8 cups of coffee they were putting these study participants on.
I would have to beat in the bathroom like 80 million times a day. That would not work for my work habits. Okay, can we just do our podcast now?
Let's
Can
get
we
to
get
the
Jeff?
interview.
Can we get Jeff?
Let's
Thank
do
you.
it.
We're listening to you too. So if you want to talk to us, please email us at bravenewweedcast@gmail.com. You can talk to me or Matthew, and we'll be happy to get back to you. Everybody who listens to this podcast knows that the days of the Alice B. Tokless brownie are really over. And our guest tonight, Jeff, the 420 chef, he will not reveal his last name, by the way, is one of the leading lights on making weed cookery delicious, modern, and possible. He's the author of The 420 Gourmet, The Art of Elevated Cannabis Cuisine, and the host of the fabulous Wake and Bake with Jeff, the 420 Chef podcast. So on this episode, Jeff is going to tell us some easy ways to cook with cannabis and some really easy ways to get that nasty, bitter, grassy taste out of the oil you cook with. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us how you started cooking with cannabis, please, and then we'll start talking about some details about how you make things taste good.
Sure. I started about 6 years ago. I was cooking for a friend of mine's mom who was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And shortly thereafter, a family member was diagnosed with brain cancer. And both of them were terminal and very uncomfortable. And their doctors recommended medical cannabis for them. These are true medical recommendations here in California. And I was pretty famous for my cookies and brownies and cupcakes and stuff. And when my friends called me out, I said, listen, can you please, cook for my mom? Maybe you can make her, some of your cookies with the cannabis that she got, because she can't smoke. Even if she could, she wouldn't. So, next time you're in California, why don't you do that for us? And I said, sure, no worries. So, I came out and made some cookies. And I have to tell you, my cookies, everyone always raved about my cookies. This time when I made my cookies with the cannabis, I did it the old-fashioned way, the way I used to do it in college, where I took the cannabis, threw it into a crock pot with some butter, made canna butter out of it, and made these cookies with the canna butter. And I was waiting for her to go, oh my God, these are amazing, and she just took one small bite, and I looked at her and her face it almost turned green.
She didn't like it.
And I said, how's the cookie? She goes, let's see if it works. And obviously, it did work, but it tasted horrendous. And to me, that was a shock, because everyone always loved my food. So I was like, wow. So I was challenged not only by her, but also by the other person I was cooking with to try to take out that taste. And I got pretty close, and I was working on taking out the taste. And at the end of the day, I realized that what's causing the bad flavor is the dirt. And there are certain compounds in the plant that, when burnt off, for example, the terpenes, they leave a residual taste, and that's the taste that you're tasting in the edibles. I invented a way to take out that taste. And once I did that, the next challenge was dosing, because
okay, hold on.
Yeah, we don't want to jump ahead.
We want to talk about all these things.
There.
So first of all, how do you get the grassy taste out? Because I've eaten, first of all, in New York, where we are, suddenly everybody's cooking edibles. No matter where I go, somebody's telling me they're making chocolates, they're making cookies, they're making this, they're making that. And believe me, the variance of taste is pretty powerful. And I found the same in California even. There doesn't seem to be any standard. So how do you get the grassy taste to go away? What's the secret?
That's a great question, especially for people that don't live in a legal state.
And I bet you're not going to answer it.
What I'm going to tell you now is going to scare a lot of people, but it's fact. And the majority of cannabis out there, even in California right now, is not clean. Yeah. And not only do you have the flavonoids and essential oils called terpenes in your plant that's a big contributor to the taste, but you also have a lot of impurities. It can be anything from insects and insect eggs and excrement to mold, fungus, bacteria, heavy metals, pesticides. Even smoke damage. I'm not going to say who's doing this, but I will tell you that I heard when I was out in the Emerald Cup that there are some unscrupulous growers that are selling cannabis from the Sonoma fires to the East Coast, and they're calling it Campfire OG. And basically, it's kind of terrible, and it's cannabis that has been tainted by the smoke from the fires. But what people don't realize is that it's not just smoke. In those fires, houses burned with toxic chemicals. And not only the toxic chemicals in the house, but the frost check that they were spraying on the fire, all that stuff blows all over, during obviously the winds in the fire. and the cannabis is ruined. But instead of, trash, unfortunately, they're selling it, and renaming it Campfire OG to get rid of it.
But 20 years ago, people were making edibles that tasted really bad. So how do you get rid of the taste of the...
You have to take all that out.
How do you do
so
that?
What I do share with people is how to take out the majority of the impurities. And what you have to do is you have to soak it in distilled water for 2 to 3 days until the water runs clear. And once that water runs clear, then you've gotten rid of the majority of the impurities. Then you have to blanch it, which is putting it in boiling water for 5 minutes.
Wow.
And then you're going to put it in ice water for a minute. And people are like, you do what?
Yeah,
so
sure.
soaking it is already, like, you can't get your cannabis wet, but that's exactly what you have to do to clean it. People always tell you don't get it wet, but the truth is you have to. The next thing is you boil it. And they're like, you're going to kill it if you boil it. But the truth is you don't.
You don't.
Because the trichomes on the plant that house the THC and the CBD are hydrophobic,
right.
Meaning that they don't come off in water, and they also don't evaporate under 365 degrees. Mm-hmm. So, you've got a lot of room there because water boils at 212 degrees.
Yeah.
THC actually starts to, degrade and evaporate around 350, right. CBD at 365. So, you've got a lot of room there. So really what you're doing by blanching it is cleaning it as much as you possibly can. Then you have to dry and decarb it. So you put it in the oven at 240 degrees for about 90 minutes.
240? 240 is the key temperature?
240 degrees Fahrenheit. For about 90 minutes. Sometimes it might be a little more if you're living in a humid environment. But if you live somewhere, let's say Arizona or California, it's usually about 90 minutes. And then when it finally comes out, once it's bone dry, all you're left with is the plant matter, which is cleaned, and the trichomes that are stuck to that plant matter. And then it's very easy for those trichomes to be infused into butter and oil and then to cook with it.
That's great. Thank you. I'm sure that will help the majority of makers starting out inevitably.
Yes, so you must clean your weed.
What about grinding it? You're supposed to grind it really fine, or you're supposed to grind it sort of in a rough consistency before you...
Don't grind it at all. So when you grind your cannabis, if you notice, on the bottom of your grinder, you have all that keef or the powder.
Yeah.
That's really trichomes that are falling off the plant,
yeah.
And you're losing your potency. So what you want to do is you want to take it and pick it off the stem. And as you're picking it, you'll realize that there's all these little buds that are stuck to the stem, and they may all look like one big clump. But when you start picking it apart, they're in separate areas, and you just pick it off, put it into a French press.
And do you use your hands to pick it off, or do you use a special instrument? You do.
Nope. Use your hands. Just pick it off. You stick cannabis into a French press. Fill the French press with water. It's usually about 3 times the amount of water to the amount of cannabis. And just soak it. You'll be shocked at what you find 12 hours later. And I would like everyone at home to do it and see what I mean.
Okay.
That's really interesting.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
So real quick before we move on from that, you're talking about removing flower from stems. Are you dealing only in flower extracts when you're making your edibles? Or have you ever dealt with like full plant, trying to pull whatever minuscule amounts are in the leaves and the stems?
No, I mean, I look, the stems I definitely use as well. The stems and the bud I use because there are trichomes on the stems. There are trichomes as well in the leaves, but the leaves have so much chlorophyll in them. I always tell people never to use shake and never to use trim if they want to have a really nice tasting can of oil and can of butter. If you use my process, your edibles will have a much, much, much lighter taste of cannabis than if you make it the old-fashioned way. And you'll find it, you'll see it yourself. It's pretty amazing. The butters and oils just taste really good compared to what they used to taste like.
Do you tend to make your stuff into butter or oil, and how do you describe the difference?
I do both. It depends on my recipe. So, I love using grass-fed butter, but you can use any butter you want. Obviously butter has a much more buttery taste, right? And it actually will hold on to a little more of the grassy taste than the oil. Oil is a lot less grassy, only because you still have some of that plant matter that is going to infuse some flavor, but it's not really a cannabis flavor. It's just like a plant matter flavor into your butter or oil. But you would use them the same way that you use butter and oil in any recipe once you've infused it.
What about like high-fat vegan products like a cashew butter or an almond butter?
I've done it. It does not work as well.
My question is dose, Jeff. This is really a hard thing for a lot of people. How do you How do you know what the dose is of what you're doing? How do you measure it? How do you adjust for it? Do you have any sense of how to do that? Can you share with us?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it took me 2.5 years to figure it out. And now I have a calculator on my website that will help you figure out the approximate dose of your edibles per serving. If you follow my my method for making canna butter and canna oil, and then infusing, obviously into your, butter and oil, and then using that in your recipe. So what happens is when you go through my process, let's say you're going to start with 7 grams of cannabis. And let's say that 7 grams of cannabis is 20% THC. When you're done with my process, because we're removing all the moisture, we're removing certain compounds in the plant that contribute to the bad taste, you're only left with about 4 grams of cannabis. But it's still the same amount of trichome. So you're really not losing a lot of trichome. So it becomes actually a bit more potent per gram, even though you have less grams. So you put that information. If you go to my website at chef420chef.com, and if you click on the THC calculator tab, starts out by asking you what your starting THC is. Yeah. So in California, we know that.
You need to know that in advance.
Yeah. Okay. So I always tell people who live on the East Coast that a safe number would probably be around 20%.
18 to 20, right? Yeah, 18 to 20, I would guess, right?
Yeah, I'd say, 18 to 20, but, cannabis is a lot more potent now, and it's getting more potent, and the stuff that's out there, especially, on the streets, I would say is probably a minimum of 20%. So if you put that 20% number in, and then you follow all the rest of the instructions, it will give you an approximate dosage per serving of your edible.
Cool. But what about, it seems to me that even consistency is difficult, even once you say you're making a chocolate, right? I've taken many chocolates in my day.
You're talking distribution.
Like how do you get it even in the your final product? How do you know that the one part of the chocolate is the same as the other side of the chocolate?
So I'll tell you what the issue's been, and what it's not anymore. So the way a lot of companies used to infuse their candies or their chocolates or whatnot, they would spray THC spray on it. So they would spray the THC onto the chocolate, and there was never an even spray and even coating. But if you're cooking with cannabis, or if you're actually making chocolate and incorporating all your ingredients properly, then every single piece of that chocolate should be even. Here on the West Coast, we have some awesome brands. For example, Kiva is a really great brand of chocolate. Bang is another really great brand of chocolate. Defonce. And these guys are, strict chocolatiers. And if they're infusing their cocoa butter, then that cocoa butter is going to be equal throughout each piece of chocolate that they make. So you're not going to have any issues or discrepancies in dosage. They can tell you, for example, Kiva can say, here's a tin of coffee beans, and each coffee bean is 5 milligrams.
And they do.
And they know that because it's precisely weighed out. Yeah. But if you're getting stuff on the black market, or you're getting stuff that, is not, processed properly or made properly, they're just taking chocolate and spraying THC oil on it. That's where you have your inconsistencies.
Thank you. Is there a way to, so if you're a home cook, is there a way to test that dose on yourself before you actually bake it or cook it?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, what I always suggest is to start with the calculator first. So if you go to my calculator and, you can figure out how many milligrams, for example, 1 tablespoon of your canna oil or canna butter is before you even start. And if the calculation, for example, comes out that 1 tablespoon of canna butter is 30 milligrams, all you need to do is use 1 tablespoon of that butter in your recipe. And if you make 10 cookies with your recipe, then each one of those cookies is going to be 3 milligrams because you're incorporating it, and it's homogenizing throughout your entire recipe. So you can pretty much do it. That's how I do it. I figure out how potent my butter and oil is per teaspoon or tablespoon, and then I'll use that to figure out how many teaspoons or tablespoons I want to use to make my food.
Do you taste the cookie dough before you make the cookies? Tell us.
Hell yeah. Every step.
Do you have to wait an hour? Do you wait an hour to decide whether the dosage is correct?
It takes about 2 hours. It actually takes about 2 hours for it to kick in.
Yeah, for me too.
So, and I always do it, and I always test my recipes before I do my dinner parties. I have to, because, especially, if I'm cooking for other people, I don't want anyone to have a bad experience. And at my parties, I will never take any guest above 10 milligrams.
Beautiful. That's so how do you do that? Do you do like 3 milligrams in an appetizer, 5 milligrams in a main, and 3 in a dessert?
Something like that. Or sometimes it's like, I'll do 1 milligram. Like hit my hazy Thai wings have been a really big hit.
Sorry, say the name again, please.
My hazy Thai wings.
Hazy Thai wings.
If you've ever been to Pok Pok in Portland, they do these amazing Thai street wings. And when I was in Portland, I fell in love with them, and I said, I'm going to try to make this recipe, and I figured it out. And I call my version hazy Thai wings, and each one of the wings is 1 milligram. So you can, and then I make what I call virgin sisters, which taste exactly the same, but they're not infused. So you can take 3 infused wings and 3 virgin sisters and have 6 wings, and you're getting 3 milligrams. And that's just like as an appetizer.
Our intern, Sarah, who's sitting here listening to the podcast, went to Reed College in Portland. And when you mentioned the name of that restaurant, her eyes lit up.
Yeah, it's a pretty awesome restaurant. I love them. And, even the recipe's in my cookbook, actually. And there's an ode to Pok Pok in the cookbook.
One of our friends sent me a question when she knew that I was going to interview you, and her question is, how do you get her chocolate keeps coming out not shiny, it comes out dusty, and it gets dull. And she was wondering, is it about the alcohol in a tincture, or is the evaporation not successful? Do you have a sense of what is affecting that?
She should not be using alcohol tincture to make her chocolate.
What should she be using?
She should be infusing her cocoa butter. So if she's using cocoa butter to make chocolate, if she's actually making chocolate, then she should be infusing the cocoa butter, and then she can do that using my recipe. So all she has to do is, clean the cannabis, and then take we call it free leaf. So the end of the process, once it's all cleaned, is called free leaf, because it's free of impurities and it's free for infusion, and it's already decarbed. So all she has to do is infuse the free leaf into the cocoa butter to make the chocolate. But if she's using, if she's just melting chocolate and then adding in tincture, that's where she has a problem.
What about adding in oils as opposed to tincture? Does that make a difference?
My suggestion would be to add in coconut oil. If she wanted to do that, a little bit. But again, you don't really want your chocolate to be oily. You really want to make your chocolate the right way, and cocoa butter is the best way to do it.
Shifting gears a little bit, but kind of doubling back as well. When you're going through this process, obviously there's going to be some, you're removing terpenes, you're removing some of the minor cannabinoids. How much does strain identity transfer across when you're making your oils and your butters? Can you track effects and strain related effects based off of your starting plant, or does all that just go out of the window because of the cooking process?
It's a great question. So first of all, when you're cooking with cannabis, everyone always says, why do you take out the terpenes? The terpenes, they're what add to the benefit and to the effect of the cannabis, right? However, what people don't realize is when you cook with cannabis, as soon as you hit 214 degrees, your terpenes start to burn off and they evaporate. So what you're left with is that really bad grassy taste, right? So you can put terpenes back into a meal, for example, because your body doesn't really know whether or not a terpene comes from cannabis or the terpene comes from another food source. So, for example, if your cannabis was high in a terpene called pinene, and you want to reintroduce pinene into a meal, all you have to do is add ingredients that are high in pinene. So, for example, pine nuts and basil, both are high in pinene. You can make a pesto, and you can reintroduce those terpenes into the meal.
Oh, come on, wait, that's going to give you the effects?
This is what I've been saying.
We've been talking about this. Is it going to give you the effects?
Yeah.
Okay, go on, talk to us.
No, so I'll explain it to you. So your body knows terpenes as terpenes, right? So the effect really, and I've done this myself, and other people swear by it as well. they say that the effect of the edibles is even better than when they smoke it. Now, I can't say whether it's because, we're taking out the terpenes and then we're putting in other terpenes. I don't know. But you should try it. I always tell people, try it before you see whether or not it works or not. It's a very different effect, but it's a much cleaner feel.
So, Matthew, what are you going to try? Matthew loves to cook, and he cooks professionally sometimes, and he does sort of competitions. What are you going to try?
I have no idea. I've wanted to dabble in, it seems like it's making sweets is a 1-to-1. You make butter equals cookies, or butter equals cupcakes or cake or whatever. I'm very interested in the more savory approach. So hearing about the chicken wings is something very intriguing to me. And I would love to get into the digging around of, all right, let's make some nice savory type dishes. Pesto sounds awesome.
Jeff,
I'm all on board.
What's your favorite savory dish of late? Come on, talk to us.
Oh God, yeah. I make some crazy stuff. One of my favorite things is my matzo ball soup.
Matzo ball soup.
Matzo ball soup. The matzo balls are infused. I love my wings, obviously. I have some really, really fun recipes in the cookbook. My can of lasagna is actually one of the best whole plant things that I make. So not only do I use can of olive oil to make my sauce when I make my tomato sauce, but I also use the cannabis leaves in conjunction with spinach. And so you're getting the cannabis leaf, plus you're getting the can of oil, plus you're getting, obviously, the THC or CBD, if it depends on what strain I'm using. And that's a full plant dish, which I happen to love, but, pretty great. And then I have some pretty fun vegan recipes as well. So, I can't say because I love all my recipes and I have over 500.
Like every chef in the world. Okay.
I have a curiosity.
Yeah.
Then what can you tell us about dietary content in the cannabis plant? Is obviously, cannabis leaf is going to be at least high in fiber, but do we know, or perhaps you have a better insight, the spinach is high in protein and iron
I have one answer.
Cannabis?
I can tell you one answer to that question based on science, that hemp seeds alone have every essential fatty acid that a baby needs to survive on planet Earth. Okay. Now, I don't know how that translates into the oils you're pulling off the plant, but there's a lot of nutritional value. Am I correct, Jeff? Is there any evidence or any study?
You definitely are. So hemp seeds contain all the essential amino acids and essential fatty acids necessary to maintain healthy human life. All right. And in addition to it be easy to digest, 100% vegan, it's obviously dairy free and gluten free. But here's something which is incredible. It's a superfood, which is rich in vitamins and minerals. It's high in omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. And it's also a great source of complete protein. So it's one of the most nutritionally valuable plants on the planet. And the crazy thing is that we've had this since the beginning of time.
Yes.
And in 1937.
But you have to eat a whole lot of it in order to keep your nutritional levels up, I have to say.
I've been looking into hemp seed.
I tell you, if you make my can of lasagna with the cannabis leaves, you feel amazing the next day.
Matthew makes his own pasta. He recently made some rye pasta. And maybe he should make a rye pasta cannabis lasagna for us
we're all going to gather here in New York.
As a crew one night. I think it's not a bad idea. Here's another question.
That would be amazing.
Here's another question from a listener. She's making honey, infused honey.
Yeah.
And she's asking, what about using soy lecithin as an emulsifier with coconut oil in the honey? Some recipes are just adding the lecithin. Other ones are using the oil, the coconut oil plus the lecithin. What's your goal? What's your advice on that?
I'm glad she asked that question. The answer is yes. The reason why you use soy lecithin though is because soy lecithin makes the cannabinoids more bioavailable to you. So your edible is going to have the same potency. So let's say your edible is 5 milligrams of THC, but your body is probably only going to absorb, let's say, 2.5 to 3 milligrams of THC. But for whatever reason, the soy lecithin makes it more bioavailable. So you'll get probably closer to the 5 milligrams. the feel of 5 milligrams.
So
that's why it feels more potent.
So the question is the answer is yes. Use the emulsifier. Use the soy with the coconut oil. Correct?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I do it myself. It's not in my cookbook, but I do that myself.
Very good. Very good.
And my suggestion is liquid soy lecithin,
as opposed to the granules.
It can come in granules or liquid, but the granules tend not to really mix very well, and they'll sink to the bottom. In honey, they may just kind of like suspend themselves.
It sounds like a bad idea.
Liquid's better.
Yeah.
Liquid's better.
So, how long have you been doing this for now? 3 years, 4 years, 5 years?
Almost 7.
Wow.
Almost 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
What's the most surprising thing
What's
What's the most surprising thing you've learned about cooking with cannabis in all these years?
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I do a lot of research because, and every day something new comes out. I'm a big fan of Dr. Raphael Mechoulam. He's the granddaddy of cannabis science, and he's the scientist who isolated THC and CBD and other cannabinoids, and he's been studying them and putting out his white papers on, all the benefits. And for me, it's specifically because, I do cook for a lot of people who are ill. And, I don't charge them at all. I want to make sure that I can teach them how to do it themselves and give them as much information as I can. So, what I do is I would rather go there and say, this is what I've learned than, just say, hey, get some weed and make yourself some edibles and feel better. So it's more of an educational process for them. And there's a lot. I've learned a lot, and I continue to learn a lot.
Well, I think you're fantastic. I want to have you back on the show, but really I want to have you to cook for me first. Listen, your book is The 420 Gourmet. And you've got a TV show coming out, right?
Oh, we actually have a channel coming out, and I have a show on the TV on the channel. The channel is called the Cannabis Cooking Channel. My show is called the 420 Gourmet, after the cookbook.
Of course.
And not only is it going to be featuring me, and I have chefs, on my show. I'm bringing on a lot of chefs, but because I now have a platform to help a lot of chefs out there, we're going to be scouting chefs all over the country, and hopefully doing shows with all of them so they can showcase who they are and what they do, and so people can find out about them and hopefully, book them and, give them business and really turn this into an industry instead of, one-offs.
So this is more like chopped, cannabis chopped?
Well, the Cannabis Cooking Channel is more like the Food Network, and it's going to have shows on it, different shows. So my show, the 420 Gourmet, is, all about, my cookbook, but also, recipes I'm doing with other chefs and stuff and teaching how to cook with clean cannabis. But, we might have another chef out there. One of my good friends, his name is Holden Jagger. And he and I, as a matter of fact, are doing a big dinner in Palm Springs around 420. And Holden does not make infused food. He does pairings. So, if he does a show with us, his show will be all about, how you pair you pair your food with a specific strain of cannabis to meet the terpenes that are in that specific strain.
Wow. That's going to be really interesting. And the show debuts when? The Cannabis Cooking Channel debuts when?
On April 20th. It's the cannabiscookingchannel.tv. It's already up in beta mode on Cannabis Club TV, which is going to be in over 350 dispensaries, as well as on Cannabis Club TV. You can sign up on the cannabiscookingchannel.tv. There's already teasers up there, and you can sign up for the mailing list. And when it launches, you'll find out all about it.
Great.
We're also doing a Kickstarter campaign soon for it as well.
That's really great. We're going to definitely be watching. We thank you very much for your time. And next time in LA, let's share a meal.
I would love that. Sounds great. Thank you very much for having me.
Fascinating stuff, Jeff. Thank you. Hey, listeners, we hope that you are enjoying the Brave New Weedcast. We're happy to bring you new episodes every opportunity we can. You know what you could do for us? You could share the Brave New Weedcast with somebody else who might be interested. I'm sure you have friends, maybe family, who have experienced pain, stress, anxiety. Who knows? If you think you can help, share the podcast with them. We'd love to welcome them to the Brave New Weed world.
So, Matthew, when are you going to cook your first 420 Gourmet meal for me?
Well, I need to crack the book open. So I know you have copies of the book. I need to get one, and I'll pick a recipe.
Okay.
It'll probably be a pasta dish because I've been making pasta lately. Pesto sounds great.
Okay, I'm going to get you a copy of the book, but I also want to remind the listeners, Folks, we have 3 copies of this book to give away. If you pony up $5 a month to support us on patreon.com, we will get the first 3 people to give us those $5 a month a copy of Jeff's book.
Yep, that's all. Just a simple sign up on the Patreon. The first 3 people that hit the $5 mark as new Patreon patrons, they get a book. We love giving away books.
Tune into our next episode to hear a great conversation with Amanda Ryman. Amanda is feet on the ground in California, and what got me really interested to talk to her was I read an article recently about a gift box that was secretly given to all the hosts and guests on the Academy Awards, filled with sun-grown, organic California cannabis. She's going to tell us exactly what's going on in California in terms of politics, in terms of culture, in terms of economy. And it's a really interesting state of affairs in a very interesting state. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Brave New Weed podcast. This episode and all future episodes are made possible by amazing listeners like yourself. If you like what you've heard, we encourage you to show your support by giving $1 a month for special access and rewards on patreon.com/bravenewweed. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram via @bravenewweed. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/bravenewweed. And remember, you can always find more information about us or information discussed in each episode by pointing your favorite browser to bravenewweed.com.